Mr. President, I am very tired, so tired of having to stand up again and defend women's rights. Yet here we are, still arguing over whether or not the lives of women are as important as the lives of men, and whether we should be able to terminate a life simply because it is female. I had hoped that we were past this argument. But no, here we are again. Like the Anglican Archbishop of Sydney, the Most Reverend Kanishka Raphael, I had hoped that this was a law behind which we would all unite, that we would stand together against sex-selective abortion, which disproportionately targets unborn girls. But no, in the second quarter of the 21st century, we are still having to make the argument that women's lives matter as much as men's, because that is the essence of this bill. I think we need to be really honest about what this bill does. It does not, as has been claimed, recriminalise abortion. It does not turn doctors into inquisitors. It does not put them at risk if women who have a sex selection abortion later change their mind. When this bill passes, abortion on demand will remain legal in New South Wales right up to the start of the first labour pains. But there will be one small change. If the only reason for that abortion is that the baby is female, that abortion will be prohibited. And this is not such a major change. Section 16 of the Abortion Law Reform Act of 2019 already provides that Parliament is opposed to the performance of terminations for the purpose of sex selection. This bill strengthens this section and says that as well as opposing sex selection abortions, they should not occur, and there will be sanctions if they do. This law will say that the lives of girl babies are as important and as worthy as the lives of boy babies, and that no life should be terminated in utero simply because of its sex. If we are serious about all the talk about ending discrimination, surely this is an obvious measure that we should be taking. Unless, of course, the talk about ending discrimination is simply that, talk, and there is no serious agreement that female lives are as worthy of continuing as male lives. Some argue that this bill is not needed because sex selection abortions are not occurring. I understand that wishful thinking. I too wish that they were not occurring, but they are. We have the Edith Cowan and Curtin University academic study, and we have the Health Department's own statistics gathered according to Section 16. Statistics which, worryingly, the government have now unilaterally decided to stop collecting. The statutory review of the Abortion Law Reform Act rightly pointed to problems with the collection of data about sex selection abortions and recommended that data collection be improved. But instead, New South Wales Health appears to have decided that this question no longer be asked and these statistics no longer be collected. This is not an improvement in data collection, it is an abandonment of data collection. If we stop asking the question about sex selection abortion, it does not mean that it has stopped happening. It simply means that we are not asking the question. We are not saying that the selective abortion of girls is important enough to inquire about. And this is wrong. This issue is important. Parliament recognised it as important in 2019. The community, judging from my correspondence, knows it is important. And I urge Health to keep asking, to keep collecting data, and not turn away and pretend that the selective abortion of girls is not happening. Because it is. I recognise the problems with this data, but this does not mean that it should be ignored. Some have argued that the health data cannot be relied upon because the technology of sex determination at the period of gestation is not reliable, and these parents could not have been sure that they were in fact aborting a girl. This misunderstands what these statistics are telling us. This data tells us that these parents wanted to abort a pregnancy because they believed that the child being carried was female, for no other reason. It is a tragedy of Greek proportions if they in fact aborted a wanted boy to avoid having a girl, but the reason remains. The purpose of the abortion was to avoid having a baby of the wrong sex. Wrong sex. What a terrible term, because it implies that there is a right sex and a wrong sex. And we know that throughout human history, I and my sisters and all women did not fall over the line into the right sex. That was men. I reject that we are the wrong sex, or that there is any wrong sex. And I reject the idea that a life should be terminated on the grounds of sex, that I am somehow more unworthy because I am female, and so I reject abortion on the grounds of sex selection. But sadly, we know that this is occurring, and not just from these statistics. I am sure that, like a number of you in this chamber, there have been a lot of conversations with constituents about the issues raised in this bill over the last couple of weeks. And I have had some very important and frankly some really troubling conversations. I spoke to a female sonographer who had specialised in female obstetric pelvic ultrasounds. That was what she had wanted to do, that was what she had trained for. And she said to me, I can't do it anymore. I had to give up. As she said, I was tired of going home feeling dirty because after I had told a woman that she was having a girl, the next question was, how do I get an abortion? And she said, I just can't do that anymore. Or a GP who was providing shared care and was writing the reference for an ultrasound, the referral for an ultrasound, and was asked by his patient what the procedure was for getting an abortion if the ultrasound gave the wrong answer, if she was in fact carrying a girl baby. When he said, well, don't be so hasty, perhaps, just because you're having a girl doesn't mean that you have to have an abortion. She remonstrated with him and he had a particularly difficult conversation with her. A lot of people have claimed that this legislation will create difficulties for doctors. In fact, if you have a doctor who actually cares about an unborn female as much as an unborn male, this legislation will be protective because it will allow that doctor the framework to say, no, it is not appropriate to be having an abortion simply because the child is female. I spoke to a midwife who works at a large Western Sydney hospital, and she told me about a man who had come in demanding an abortion for his wife because they had had the 20-week NIPS test and the child was female. And they said quite sensibly, well, we really can't book your wife in for an abortion until we have seen your wife. So he came back again with his wife. And because it was over 20 weeks, it was going to be a complex surgical abortion. They arranged the time for the abortion to occur, and then the woman failed to present. They had been worried about this woman anyway because of the tenor of some of the conversations, and so they rang to do a follow-up to see how she was and what was happening and why she didn't present. And she said, don't worry. He drove me to Newcastle and he got me aborted there because he really didn't want me to have this girl. There was no conversation about what she wanted. There was no respect for the female that was being carried. But the husband got the abortion that he wanted because he was not going to allow his wife to carry a female child one day longer than necessary, even if that meant driving from Western Sydney to Newcastle. sex selection abortions are occurring. Female babies are being aborted for no other reason than that they are female. And we should stand against this. But even if no sex selection abortions were occurring, I think we would still want this clear statement in the law. In the same way that I'm sure that if we lived in the magic year of no murders or the magic year of no rapes, we would still want clear statements in our law that these actions are wrong and are prohibited. We want, I hope, our law to say clearly that all lives are equal, female as well as male, that this is a cultural value which we all hold and will all protect. I will vote for this bill because I want to be able to look into my daughter's eye and say that you are as loved by me as your brother. Your life is as important to me as your brother's, and your life is as valuable to me and the whole community as your brother's. But without supporting this bill, how can I truly say this? When we come to vote, remember that your daughters are watching, and they are looking, as they should, for recognition and affirmation that they are not the wrong sex, that they are not lesser, and that their lives should never have been considered for termination simply because they were female. They are looking to see all of us join together and support this bill, and I recommend this bill to the House.
The Honourable Anthony D'Adam.